It is my pleasure to introduce Patricia Townsend, Archivist Emerita, who has graciously consented to have a conversation with me today. The award of Archivist Emerita was granted based on Pat's scholarly and professional experience, as well as meritorious service to Acadia University. Pat is the recipient of Acadia's first award for 50 years of service. She has actually served the university for 51 years, working in archives and special collections. Known for her humility and reticence to be in the limelight, she is in fact a fount of knowledge about Acadia University and the Manning Memorial Chapel. Want to know what documentation is buried in the depths of the archives? Ask Pat. Welcome, Pat.
Thank you.
And thanks for making the time to have a conversation with me.
It's my pleasure.
Well, tell us, when did you come to Acadia, and what were some of the highlights of your experience here, some of the significant changes that you have seen over the years?
I came in July of 1972. In many ways, it seems like yesterday, but it's a long time ago, and I was, of course, much younger. The archives has grown substantially since I came here. I think that would be one of the things that I'm most proud of is the development of the archives and special collections themselves. And I think in terms of highlights, I would say that's one of the highlights of my service to the university would be the growth of the archives. I've also seen significant changes to the university in this time period. A lot more students, of course, a lot more buildings, and a reinvigoration of the campus, I would say. When I came, a lot of the residences had been built after the Second World War into the 1950s and 60s, and they really needed a lot of work to bring them up to par, and that's happened, and I think has made a huge difference to students being interested in living on campus. Yeah.
And are there any special collections that you'd like to highlight, or special relationships?
Sure. I think in terms of special collections, there's one I'm particularly proud of, and it's the Eric Dennis collection of Canadiana. It's named in honor of an Acadia student who died in the First World War, and it's a collection of close to 10,000 monographs, periodicals, in a period from about the late 1600s to the 1920s, wow. And it's purported to be one of the best collections of Canadiana in the country. And we brought it up to, working with other people in the library, we brought it up to appropriate cataloging standards, that kind of thing, yes.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Wonderful. So what about the church-related work? I know Acadia University was started by the Baptists.
Yes.
So is there anything special related to the Baptists and the Divinity College?
Yeah, I think there is. We know that the Baptists started to collect historical records in the 1840s, so not long after the university's founded, and their aim was to bring them to Acadia for their long-term care and preservation. So we have records for close to 900 Baptist churches in Atlantic Canada, and and the archives has a very close relationship with the Divinity College through teaching church history and utilizing the archives for research in particular. Yes.
Okay, that's great. Who were some of the senior archivists who mentored you when you just came to Acadia University?
Yeah. I think of one lady in particular. Her name was Isabel Horton, and Isabel graduated from Acadia in the 1930s and then went on to McGill and did a library degree, was the university librarian here, and she had a real interest in the Baptist archives, and she really took me under her wing when I came. I, you know, at the time you don't think of it, but I sure look back on it, and I was very, very fond of her, and we worked together for close to 30 years. So I would say that Mrs. Horton was certainly my mentor, yes, for
Okay,
sure.
great. And what kind of research interests have you had personally?
Primarily, I think, to do with the history of the university, but as well, in the last probably 10 years or so, I've become very interested in the history of Baptist women preachers in the Maritimes. These were ladies that were licensed to preach, but never became ordained.
Yes.
So the Baptists don't ordain a woman in the Maritimes till 1953.
Wow.
But there are women preaching starting in around 1918. They're licensed to preach and they serve in churches. They're doing everything, but they don't have the reverend in front of their name. So I have been doing research on these ladies and writing about them, and I intend to write more about them in my retirement. They're virtually unknown, most of them, and very, very interesting women. Most of them are graduates of Acadia, and serve small rural churches in the Maritimes, really rural, like, you know, in Cape Breton and up on the North Shore of New Brunswick in the 1920s and 30s. And practically all of them are single women too, which is interesting.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you remember a name or two?
Certainly, yeah. The first woman to be licensed to preach in Nova Scotia is a lady named Gertrude Eaton, and she was from just across the way in Upper Kennard, and she's licensed to preach in 1918. And then a year later, the first one in New Brunswick is Esther Clark, who became Esther Clark Wright, and she is licensed to preach by her church in Fredericton in 1919. And interestingly, both those women are graduates of Acadia's class of 1916,
Wow.
which is interesting. You know, and fortunately we have some of Esther's, I should say Dr. Wright's sermons in the archives, because she spent a summer in a small community called Grangeville, New Brunswick, and preaching and serving the church. You know, had the Sunday school, did everything. So I've got quite interested in that, yes. Yeah.
Oh, well, we look forward to hearing more about this, and we probably have to invite you back to the chapel to talk just about these women. Who knows? No, speaking of the chapel, you have been so helpful to me. Thank you. Since I came in getting information, learning about things. And I will confess often at the last minute to produce something.
Not to worry.
So would you like to tell us something about the history of the Manning Memorial Chapel?
Sure. Well, as you know, previous to the Manning, chapel services right from the beginning, in 1838, we can document it, were held in University Hall, College Hall. And they never were, it was never a requirement, but chapel was held every morning during the week. But there was a movement through people like Charlie Taylor, I would say, and others, and of course Gordon Lummis and the stamps, the chapel stamps, because they saw the need for a place, and that's how the chapel comes into being, and through contacts with the Fountain family, and particularly Marjorie Fountain, Mrs. Fountain. The money is provided through the Fountain Trust in the late 1950s, early 1960s, and the chapel is dedicated on, I believe it's October the 2nd, 1963, and Frank Locke was the chaplain at the time. Yeah.
Wow. Any other significant milestones or personalities associated with the chapel? Charlie Taylor.
Charlie Taylor, I would say. Certainly Judd Levy, Judson Levy. I hear students, who graduated from Acadia talk about Judd and his influence on them, a tremendous influence.
Well, archives probably, and the library in general, and probably even more so archives, can seem kind of remote from folks' lives. It doesn't often get the kind of press
that's true
that the lectures, the academic departments would get. So what would you see as the relevance of archives today, and what are some of the emerging trends in archival practice?
I think in terms of emerging trends, I think the most important one is digitization. And this is going to make a huge change for access and for people to realize what are in the archives, you know? So we've been, I mean, we're small, but we've been making a real effort to start to digitize material that's in the archives that is in the public domain, so that it can be used for research by students or by researchers from away. Because of digitization, you can have a researcher in Toronto who can do his research online and go back and forth with you about other resources, and then maybe decide to come here to do research on material that hasn't been digitized. So I think that's a huge change from my day when it was, you know, when I started, it was paper, and as you say, really not that well known, utilized by the university for all sorts of different things. I can remember back in the day, a couple of presidents ago, where I'd be in the background feeding information, historical information for a speech that a president had to give, that kind of thing. So there's always been a lot of interaction between the administration and the archives and various departments, particularly I'd say history and classics and the Divinity College, of course. But I think digitization is just going to make a massive change. It already has. When you look at the amount of material that's been digitized at large archives in North America, for example, massive change,
What kinds of documents would you think that the chapel and different departments of the university may want to consider having a copy stored in the archives?
That's a very good point, because it's archival, but it's also called something records management. And we don't have a records management program at Acadia. The only university in the province that does is Dalhousie. So if in records management, it would mean that certain records would just automatically come to the archives. Right now, it's I wouldn't use the term hit or miss. I mean, most certainly records like minutes of Senate, minutes of the Board of Governors, all of that level comes automatically. So we've got a lot of work to do in that as well, in getting it more regularized, I'd say.
And maybe even in the interim, the departments could probably be a little bit more thoughtful, mindful of what even they can store.
That's right.
So that succeeding generations who want to do some historical research will be able to find that material.
I think that's very true. We have a situation where, I don't know if this is appropriate or not, it can get cut out, but where there's one president that we have no records of in the archives at all, because his family, this is in the 1920s, his family said they were just to be thrown out. And so they were, you know, so we need more awareness, for sure, more PR, if you want to call it that. And the younger folks that are down there now, they're into that, so that's really good for the future.
Wonderful. So maybe I can put a plug for the archives.
Yes.
And to suggest that maybe different departments
absolutely.
may want to consult with the archivists.
Consult with the archivists.
Even in terms of their own records management.
That's
now,
right.
Within the departments, to make sure that we're not forever beginning.
That's right.
But we do have.
Yeah, that's true.
How does that quote go about history, not learning from history?
Oh, yes, about not learning from the past. Yes, what is that? Oh, it'll come to me. Oh dear.
Somebody will remind us. But
not
having knowledge of history, there are many quotes, really means that we end up not understanding even who we are. Present.
That's right. That's right.
And with no guidance for the future.
So, I would love to see the students, the current students, know more about the history of the university, and for example, the residences they live in. You know, most of them are named after people. And who were those people? And more, I think that, we do a little work with Whitman, Tully, the famous Tully Tavern it was called, but I'd like to see more of that, because I
Yes.
think the students need to know more about the history and also what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Pat, we've talked about all these deep and serious things. What do you do for fun when you come out of the archives?
When I emerge.
When you emerge from the
Oh
archives?
dear. I love to drive around country roads in Nova Scotia, mainly looking for old Baptist churches, but, and cemeteries, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I do a lot of that, especially in the summer and the fall.
Yeah.
And I've taken up a bit of gardening the last year or two, maybe COVID related, but I'm not very good at it, but I'm trying.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm fortunate. I have 2 granddaughters, so lots of time with them too. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, thanks, Pat. I look forward to hearing more about your research with these licensed women
Yes,
preachers
love
and
to share
whatever
it.
else you're getting up to
Yes.
in this new phase of life. We wish you all the best in your life and work, and we hope to see you more often with our chapel activities.
Okay, thank you very
Thank you.
much. Okay, thanks. Could have mentioned Jack Russell dogs, but I didn't.
Jack Russell dog?
We did. We had 2 Jack Russells over the time when the children were little and stuff, and George
Yeah.
keeps saying to me, maybe we should get another one, but maybe not a puppy. They're so full of vim and vigor when they're pups, but maybe a grown one, like a rescue or
Yes.
something. I just love them. They're lovely dogs.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
Our last one was called Harper, and his middle name was Stanfield. So if you got to know him, you could call him HST, Harper
Yes.
Stanfield Townsend. My husband's a real political junkie, so
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, that's cool.
yeah. Are you a cat person or a dog person, or
I like
cats?
both,
Yeah.
actually. Probably a little bit more skewed to cats in that,
Yeah.
in that I'm lazy.
Yeah.
And cats look after
themselves more easily. Yeah,
But I like
yeah.
the kind of sense of the regal bearing of the cats.
Yes.
And that
yes.
they always seem to be saying to you, human,
Yes, humor me.
do know
Yeah, do you know
that
who I
it is your
am?
privilege
That's right, to be in
To
my
feed
presence,
me.
to feed me and
and to
change
keep
my
my
litter.
surroundings clean, precisely.
yes.
And
That's
know that I will be stroked on my schedule.
That's right, not yours. Oh dear.
And then the dog just say, oh, I'm so happy to see you. Always happy to see you.
Yes,
Mrs.
tail
Wayne."
wagging. Yes, that's right.
Yeah,
The
so-
cat sort of,
Yeah.
she's home.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, don't be late with my food, and don't change the food without
That's
notice.
right.
I
That's
like
right. Yeah.
order.
Yes, and appropriate tidbits.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.